Now, Graham will sort of kick off. Graham, listen, thanks very much for coming on. We've been trying to get you on for a number of weeks, so apologies. It's mainly been my fault that we haven't had you on. Every time I plan something, something comes up. For a fella who does nothing, I seem to be very busy. Um, and Adam Kendall, thank God, Adam Kendall is on mute because he would have a dig at me because there's a pallet of bricks in my front lawn that have been there for probably a month, and I think I've promised to get rid of them about 5 times, and they still haven't happened. Um, Graham, I was trying to think today when the first time we sort of crossed paths, and I have to say it probably came to my mind um, that the first time we crossed paths was probably around 2014, 2015 at the National when Dave Shelbourne was running the Federation show. Would that be probably around close
I
enough?
think that'd be about right. Yeah, sounds about
Yeah,
right.
yeah, I thought 14, 15, and then we'd obviously steward together over those number of years together.
We have.
Because I obviously was just a fella who stewarded and didn't do anything else. And then we sort of became probably more entwined from 2018 when I took on the Federation role, Federation Secretary role, and was running the National in Africa on behalf of the Federation. So it's been quite a long time since we sort of crossed paths, to be fair. And I've always known you as just a Fife man who kept a few lizards,
Yep.
but there's probably quite a bit more string to your bow, as they would say. You're obviously a keen fisherman. Um, you're part of a big fishing club that probably only came to prominence in for us. We all didn't know probably in 2020 when COVID hit because you were having online fishing meetings. Now
Mm.
I don't know whether you have fishing contests online. I don't know how you do it when
Well,
you're
we,
out the
we
backyard.
managed to get round that with the DEFRA. We got the nearest lake to us is it's about 3 acres, so there's only 25 pegs round it. But so long as we missed out every other peg, the distance, social distancing, so you're talking about 30 yards between people, and they didn't meet up to have a chat like you normally wander to the next peg and have a word. So long as we didn't do that, then it more or less carried on as normal.
Yeah, so that was great
But we
because it was
had
obviously
Zoom. That was where we had our first Zoom committee meetings because we still have to have a committee meeting every month to run the club. So that's where I
yeah, which is
got into the
probably
Zoom
one of
group.
the probably one of the few hobbies that survived really COVID, as in the interaction. Like we
Mm,
tried the best we could, obviously with the board world, because we are just having. I think this is probably where, for me, probably this is when this forum started. That we started doing Zoom room meetings in
mm.
early 2020, under the federation when I was secretary there, and we sort of had plenty of Zoom meetings over the time of COVID. So it was grand, but also you're an avid snooker player as
Oh yes,
well.
I'm still playing. Don't get any better, but I'm still playing.
Still, yeah. Well, I was. I can say the same about the board world. I've been in there for nearly 30 years, and I'm still no better than I was the first day I joined. So, I can feel it. But I only come across the fact that you're such a snooker fan because your website is linked to snooker.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I came across.
Yeah, well, do you want me to start from the beginning?
Yeah. Well, I was just going to ask
Oh,
where it all started from.
what with the birds?
With
Yeah,
the birds, yeah. Like, where
right.
is it a family thing? Like,
Yeah. I mean, well, when I was born, obviously, I don't really remember what was going on, but my dad had racing pigeons then.
yeah,
So that was in the sort of late 40s. And then we moved house when I was about 3 or 4 to a council house where there was a nice brick built shed. This was around 49, 50, and it was the start of the Gloucester Canaries. And my dad and a few others were like at the beginning of the start of the Gloucester Canaries. But as I say, when he had his pigeons, he used to cycle 6 miles to Upton from Twinning, where we were born, and on his bike to do the pigeons and do the weigh in and the clocking in machines and all them sorts of things. But that was what it was like back then, wasn't it? But Dad was on the post, and so he had his Gloucesters all the way through the 50s, and started this with this new variety. Well, it was new to everybody really in the 50s, and then we moved house again, and that's when I had my first aviary. So I was probably about 8 or 9 then. That's when I first had a few finches, diamond doves, them sorts of things, just out in a thing where he was still concentrating on his Gloucesters and showing them. Then we moved again into Tewkesbury itself. We're only talking about moving sort of 5 or 6 miles in different directions. And that was where the Tewkesbury CBS was held. They had their meetings and their annual show. They used to have it in the town hall in Tewkesbury. And what they used to do, it was in the middle of the town hall, and they used to put the speakers outside and run the microphone through into the show. So you had all the birds chattering away. So people that were walking past, they used to get called in to have a cup of tea and then pay a couple of bob to have a wander around the show. That was a way of getting people in them days. It was quite a big event at the town hall, so we had a good one there. And you've got a picture there with me on there,
Yeah.
Paul. Can you put that one on or not?
Yeah, like, is it this one here that's held in?
The one with yeah, that's it. There I am.
Yeah, it's
63. Look at that, a sweet 16. There's me dad on the left, and there's me mum just behind him.
As in this, the fella in the middle there with the short and tie, just the darker jacket.
No, my dad's on the left.
Oh, he's on the left.
He's the
Sorry.
nearest to the cages.
Yeah, yeah.
They're looking at their Gloucesters there. Look.
Yeah.
So that was it. See,
In
63.
1963.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, Twinsby and District, and I'm going to sort of state that show obviously is no longer going.
Oh no. No, that was the thing.
And
As I say, not all exhibitors could travel to the shows in those days, and we still had a good railway system. So
is that what we had so many? Is that what we had so many local? Like we had a show in every town because transport was obviously poor.
Every show, every town around in Gloucestershire, more or less had a show. So there was so much choice, and you didn't have time. There must have been specialist shows, but you never really got round to going to them because you had so many local ones to support at the time. But we used to go up to the railway station, which is about 3 miles away, and the guys used to send their birds down. We used to go up and pick them up to the show, and the show after the show, take them back to the station, and put them back on the train. That was part of the life of how we did it. And Dad used to use it for his Gloucesters. He used to go to
boards travel
specialists.
unaccompanied on the train.
Oh yeah, I mean they just went in the car's van.
And then when it got to the next stop, there was me and Mike Farrar were standing on the edge from the committee, and we just took the boards off to put them in the show.
Yeah. Well, Dad used to show at specialist shows with his Gloucesters. So he used to go up to the station, send them off. I mean, they were away for 3 or 4 days sometimes. By the time they got there and done the show and then got back again, and the guys with Big Dad being on the post, he obviously used to take the mail up to the station, so he knew all the porters. So as soon as his boxes got back, they used to ring down to the post office and tell him his boxes were in. They'd already opened them up and tell him how many rosettes he got as well. So that was all good fun.
It's nearly alien to the fact of how we do things now. We don't even travel. We don't even travel now to shows in a lot of cases as a collective, where the sheer idea of putting boards on a train unaccompanied to travel up the road, and the show committee coming out and picking them up and putting them into the show, winning your prize, putting your rosettes, putting them back in the box, putting them back on the train, and send them back in the opposite direction. It's nearly alien to what we do today.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's it. After station that disappeared as well, no?
Yeah, like
Ashford Station, which we used, that disappeared, but it's now back been rebuilt and a new station now because it's on the main line up to Gloucester up to Birmingham, so it's on the main drag on that one there. So then we moved again in Tewkesbury, and we moved to the old post office over the top of where Dad worked, and we had flats up there, and I took over the old. It was the phone exchange place. The old telecommunications room that used to be was dismantled. So I had this great big room. So I built a load of aviaries, new cages, and all that was set up in there. So that was quite nice. And with Dad on the post, going out and around, obviously he used to come back at the chickweed time, the old post bag full of the old fresh chickweed. He could go and pick it in the fields on his route round. So his birds never went without any chickweed, that was for sure.
And was he keeping pigeons as well as small
No,
birds?
no, no, no. When he started with the birds in the 50s, the pigeons went. He
The
just
pigeons went.
concentrated on just Gloucesters. And just one point, he packed them in. We started again, and it was what 2000 something like that. He still had Gloucesters then, and he never owned a yellow Gloucester in all 50 years. Never owned a yellow. It was
Wow.
buff to buff, because he reckoned the yellows weren't good enough then.
And probably lads would probably still agree with you now, because you don't
Well, I
see
must admit, over the
not a
years,
lot
I've
of yellow birds
seen some cracking yellows now, mind.
now.
The
Yeah, and
Gloucesters.
now we're going to new colours.
Yeah, I'll come on to that in a minute
I was going to think that. I
with the
was going
new
to.
colours. Yeah, so one of the rounds Dad used to go on was used to be a lot of the old blackcurrant picking orchards and whatever you call them, and they had the rights to trap bullfinches, because obviously they used to take all the buds off the blackcurrant bushes, which they didn't want, so they could trap and, in theory, destroy bullfinches. Well, of course, Dad used to go up there, and I'd come back with about 20 or 30 that they'd trapped. I'd sort myself out 3 or 4 nice new young stock and let the rest go over the fields. And
Back out again.
yeah, but it was before you had to ring them. So you had nice new bullfinches every year to put on the show bench. It was all good fun then. And as I say, you didn't have to close ring them, so you didn't have a problem with that one. Now there's a photo of me and Dad. You got the two of us there in me tie.
I don't have that one. I tell you one I do have. I have this one. Is the one I can only find. That is that one.
Right, there we go. So what you've got there is bottom right, Fred Bryant. He was another one of the starting people with the Gloucesters. There's me Dad behind him on his right. And then Jack Thornton, top left-hand corner. They were the 3 main Gloucester people back in the day.
And is that's a cluster in the cage? I was looking at that earlier, and I was actually thinking to myself, it looks like a Stafford Canary with the shortness of the brow.
Yeah.
And the
Oh, yeah,
narrowness
it's
of
much bigger now than what it used to be.
Yeah, like those Gloucesters there are like Jay's Fife.
But as
the
you can
flat
see,
back on them,
the ideal
like,
Gloucester back in them days was the dark cap, clear bodied, and dark winged look. You see the one down with Fred at the bottom there. You can see the crest.
yeah, right in the front. And the lad in the middle is like most photographers that take pictures today. It's an empty cage. It's amazing. It's amazing the amount of shows that we go to now, and there's a winning board, and it's like cracking, and it's just a picture of an empty cage because
Yeah,
the board is
down on the bottom.
The board is dived under the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll sit on that one then. Right. So what have we got next? Yeah, I was saying about the number of clubs that there were around. I mean, there just every weekend there was one within sort of 15 or 20 mile, because you never travelled in them days like you do today.
Yeah, and then in the way of fanciers, Graham, when you were growing up, like your dad, obviously, like within say a 10-mile radius of where you lived. Now, by the way you've moved around there, it nearly sounds like you were in witness protection, because you seem to move. You seem to move every couple of years, like as if someone found out where you lived. So your dad went, cover blown, we have to move,
Yeah,
But
something like
within like a 10-mile radius of your house growing up, like obviously your dad was a prominent fancier.
Yeah.
And I love the way everyone wore short and ties. How many fanciers would there have been within 10 miles of your house?
Oh, yeah, there'd be dozens, dozens and dozens. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
mean, the thing
today,
is, but when you went, like, I mean, where I am now in Cheltenham from Tewkesbury is what, 8 miles away.
yeah.
And here, I mean, again, you had the Cheltenham Cage Birds Club, which I got involved with later years when I moved to Cheltenham. But there was Worcester, which is not far away, Evesham, not far away. So you had Gloucester. Gloucester had 3 or 4 clubs. When you had a CBS, they had a budgie, they had a foreign and budgie, and then of course, then when you started to take it into the forest, you had Ross on Wye. A big long trip would have been down to Chepstow. But
And how far was
I
that?
mean, everywhere around you, they all had CBSs, so it was plenty of scope in them days. But as I say, back in the 70s, yes, yeah, we moved again, which meant that the birds had to go because it was a private flat that my mum and dad had. So that all went. Anyway, in the 1970, I got married, and then we had a couple of kids and started up again back in about 80. I had the old zebras and a few budgies. And I moved on to red factors and lizards, because back in them days, lizards and red factors were in the same cage. It was the same
Oh,
cage. And we used to go up to the National. And again, I fell in love with the Yorkies up there. So I thought, right, let's try a few Yorkies as well. So I had a bit of everything going on there with the red factors. And one time when Dad was breeding, he had a spare Corona cockbird. He said, what you got to go with it? And I said, well, nothing much there. I said, the only thing I got is a red intensive hen, knowing that all this stuff was buff to buff. And anyway, 2 rounds later, we invented the first Stafford. Not that we knew it was a Stafford at the time, but back then we actually bred birds with crests that took the red colour. That's before Staffords was invented.
wow.
So
Wow.
that's going back a long way. I mean, they all sold being coloured birds, colour fed. There was something a bit different, especially with a crest. And then years
Yeah.
later,
Yeah.
think, "Oh, what's this Stafford?" And we had them bloody donkeys years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. We're reinventing something that was already done.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Anyway, I went on to the Reds and had the old dimorphics and things like that. They always sold well, being coloured again, like at the pet shop I'm on about where they sell.
Yeah.
And we used to go up to the National, and we seen Mr. Lumsden in his kilt back in the days when he used to be walking around strutting about the place. And then I really got more into the Fifes then back in the 90s. So I've really had Fifes since the 90s. And as I say, most of the offices or officers' positions in CBSs I've held over the years at the Cheltenham Cage Bird Society, that folded unfortunately 2004. That's when I started having to, again, clubs were closing down year after year, less and less. So then you started thinking you're going to have to go to more specialist clubs to find any competition. If you're going to travel, you ain't going to travel 50 miles to a CBS. You might as well travel 50 miles to a specialist show.
Especially.
Yeah, that was the
Yeah.
thing. So that was when I first joined the International Fife, which, as far as I can make out, has died in the water this year. That was
Yeah. Unfortunately.
because nothing's happening with it. He's just not doing anything. The man is not answering my calls or anything. So
Yeah. It's an unfortunate one because like you were sort of you were very prominent in the club for
that was it. Yeah, I
forever.
mean, I was the president and everything else of it in later years, and I mean, I was the treasurer, and then the show's over in Oxford. I'm here in Cheltenham, 45 mile away. So he was ideal when he fancied taking it on Mr. Cheshire, and his wife being a money, whatever you call her.
Accountant.
So they took over. They took over me having to worry about the treasury side of it, but it's now all died a death. So I don't quite know what's going to happen with that over there.
Yeah.
But there
Yeah.
we go. That was the problem with them over there. I then the Oxford 1910 Club, which was just up the road from where the International used to have their show, was always on the Saturday, and the International was the Sunday. So I said, "There's no way I'm doing the two shows."
Yeah.
But luckily for me, the International moved their date, so I was then able to go to Oxford, so I could show me lizard, and then I walked in, and there to see a row of blue lizards. I mean, I'd packed in the lizards some years back. I thought it's no good. I'm going to have to start with the lizards again. So that was their centenary year, 2010. And so I got some pairs ready for the 2011 season. So I've been breeding the blue lizard since 2011. At the same time, then I used to run a Fife and Border forum on the web, which was that was in the days when people didn't put their real names to their faces, if you know what I mean. Well, you never saw their face.
Was that back in the MSN days?
Yes. And it was a Fife and Border forum. And so that's where I got my name from as being admin. Nobody knew who I was really. I was Snooker Ace, that was it.
Snooker Ace, yeah,
Snooker
Snooker
Ace, that
Ace.
was it. So when I
Yeah, yeah.
started my website, that was in 2013. I started my website, and it's Snooker Ace's Fifes. I just left it at that. So I thought anybody wants me, they can find me on that easy enough. And I keep that updated every year. It's really for the newbie, you know, showing the difference between your yellows and your buffs and all the different things like that. I mean, it's more or less all the things on there that I do, how I do it. And I've also got a diary running, so weekly or every fortnight when something's worth putting on, I've got that running each year as well. Just keep
Which
it
is
up.
brilliant. Which is brilliant. Like.
Well, the thing is, when I retired way back 2004, I went to learn how to use the computer at in Cheltenham. At there was 3 lessons with the Gloucester, and then you go through all the different things, and amongst it was learning website design. So I did all that. So I thought, well, the only way you're going to remember it is to actually use it. So that's why I set up my website for that. I've got one for me snooker, one for me skittles, everything. So it's just keeping
Brilliant.
you used to using it, you know.
Yeah, and it also keeps you young, Graham. It keeps you young.
Keep you busy.
Oh, for sure. For
That's
sure.
for
That's for
sure.
sure.
Yeah. Stafford is obviously my big show, the one I love going to, and then follow that usually with the International, which isn't going to happen this year. Then you got Southern Counties, then you got Cinderford, CBS, Oxford, CBS. Often been going to the High Wycombe or Canary. Again, that's somewhere where you've got good competition, and you've got all the Canaries, so I can take my lizards along there as well to that one. And they do have a standalone blue lizard show in December. That's where they have their AGM and everything like that gets discussed on that one. So that's quite a good show.
Mhm.
And as I say, I've never actually won a best in show as a specialist show. I've tried it in plenty of the CBSs. I had it last year at Siren and down in Cinderford and Oxford. But the only claim to fame really is best cinnamon in show up at Stafford a few years back now.
But you also won. Didn't you win best blue lizard in the
Oh yeah,
Welsh
lizards done well. Yeah.
National? In the Welsh National.
Oh yeah, best in show at Welsh National.
Yeah, but that's no mean feat to just skip over there, Graham, if you don't mind me saying.
How that, Nana?
Oh, you remind me of Adam Kendall. Every time I go to his house, he shows me a rosette from somewhere, you know.
Yes, that's a good show. That one is down there. I mean, we've been doing that for donkey's years, but being in January, it's can be a bit dodgy with
Your
the
hands in your life with the weather.
yeah. I mean, the one year I got all signed up to sent the entries in, got all the cages ready. I set off. I got just to the side of Gloucester, and it started raining, and I started going down through the forest, which turned into snow, and I got stuck in the forest for an hour. I had to turn around and come back home. I couldn't get there.
Couldn't get you. Yeah. That's the problem with January weather when you go to Wales.
Yeah,
You can leave your house with your rain jacket on, and you can end up in your swimming shorts, like
that's it. It's all
like
difficult
Brian
times, isn't it?
McCarthy halfway down.
Yeah, so that's more or less my little bit,
Yeah,
really.
right. Well, we'll drag it back a small bit, if we can. Like
Mm,
you said there, you started in the blue. You obviously had lizards when you were younger, and you started
mm.
back off in the blue lizards. Did you enter the blue lizards at the freedom frightened stage when blue lizards were being fought against, really? Because
Oh
blue
yes.
lizard, because blue lizard was a new like not saying it was a new color that was being resisted from the standard.
Well, when
And
I first saw one up at the National back in the 90s when they first came out, um, but when you belong to the LCA, you actually signed to say that you wouldn't mess about with any other colours bar the normal colour-fed bird.
yeah, so were
You
you
actually
part? So were
signed when you
you signed?
joined. You more or less signed to say that you would not actually mess about with the colours.
So when you joined back in 2004 with the lizards, were you
Yeah, that
part of?
was a different
Were you
story
part?
then. Yeah,
Were you part of the suffragettes? Like,
a little bit. Um, but then I mean, we were talking like 10, 15 years had moved on. So people were having to accept them. They had no option. They were starting to come in. So, and Dave Allen, who also lived in Oxford, as I say, he had, he'd bench this row there. When I saw him, I thought it's no good. I'm going to have to get some. So that was it, really.
yeah, yeah.
But
I,
I mean, one of the High Wycombe shows I went to, I was stewarding. I think I was stewarding the Irish Canaries, and of course you keep popping back to see how things are going on. And the normal lizards had been judged, but nobody had touched the blues. So the guy that was doing the normal lizards, I said, "Oh, I said, are you judging the blues?" Jesus, he went absolutely apeshit. I mean,
yeah,
he didn't want to know about blues at all. I mean, that was horrendous. Mr. John
yeah.
Rutherford is his name, and he's still big in the LCA, but he does not have anything whatsoever to do with blues. He will not.
Yeah, but you see, currently in the Scottish National, I was looking last week and I was doing just the judges for the Scottish National. And predominantly over the last 5 or 10 years, like lizards are tipping in some shows as AOVs.
Mm.
Like they're not a huge breed. But I noticed last week on the Scottish on the Stafford or the on the Stafford show that they have two different judges. And I wondered, is the split and sometimes still is there still a few judges that won't judge the blue
Oh
because
yes,
they've a,
yeah,
because
yeah,
they've a separate judge from the LCA and then there's the BLA or something.
yeah. Yes,
Um,
it's still a bit that way. I mean, what was it about 4 or 5 years? Well, before COVID, anyway. Because a lot of the guys that keep the blues, they don't obviously. I mean, when you're breeding blues, you got to bear in mind that you're using a blue to a normal colour-fed bird. But of course, they've no need to colour feed them, so they end up with a natural-looking lizard, which is a gorgeous colour, especially the golds or the yellows, as you would call it. It's a cracking colour green. It is because you're not colour-fed, and there's no need to it. So you've got a lot of people that keep the blues and don't colour feed. So what they thought was they would put classes on for non-colour fed. So you got your buffs and your yellows, or they call it silver and gold, but they're not colour fed. So they put classes on, and it was quite well supported because loads of blokes have got them. They got the show cages. They might as well put them in a show. Otherwise,
Yeah.
they're sat at home doing nothing. And then the following year, they decided to put it in at the National, Stafford.
Okay.
And then, of course, everything went a bit tits up because all of a sudden, the LCA realised that you got this other class coming in. So they wanted to put one in as well. So they had to send everybody in the LCA a letter giving the judges permission to judge birds that are not colour fed, because that was written in the constitution of the LCA. The bird must be colour fed. So you've got these other birds coming along now that aren't colour fed. And they actually put classes on for non-colour fed, the same as the blues, same year at the National. And of course, that one didn't go down too well. So the following year, the Parrot Society said, now hang on, we can't have two lots of classes for the same birds. And being as the LCA had been going longer,
The government
the
body, yeah.
Parrot Society, they won out. So if you want to show your non-colour fed birds, you've got to show them under the LCA, not with the blues. So it's still pretty raw out there.
Yeah, but is that like, obviously for me, lizard canaries are obviously in the decline, and the bullshit doesn't help.
No.
It just doesn't help, that we're restricting lads from showing because we're trying to figure out who has the biggest dick. Like, do you see it? Like, will it be the end of the lizard canary? Will this fight still bitter to the end? Like, is there new people coming into lizards?
I think it's still fairly strong. I mean, a few years ago, I mean, Stan Bolton, he's the top lizard man. He's Mr. Lizard. He got the best in the world, really. And but unknown to a lot of people, Stan started breeding blues, right?
Yeah.
Which obviously, being president and everything else to do with the LCA, he couldn't tell anybody. Then he exhibited them, and he had best blue and best everything else. Of course, it had to come out then, and they threw him off the committee of the LCA. Yeah, so it's still pretty ripe.
Yeah, it's still pretty raw.
But
Yeah.
of course, now you're getting people. I know there's quite a lot in Australia. Have got the red. It's a red lizard, and the cinnamon's coming out. A lot of people are breeding cinnamon lizards this year, so that's going to be more controversy, I'm sure.
Yeah, like the biggest section when you go to the World Show, and it's growing. And Mike is here too. Mike has been to the World Show several times, more than me. It's the biggest section in the World Show is the color canary section. Like, it's phenomenal the amount of new colors. Like, we were there, and there's black canaries, there's all sorts of colors. Is it only a matter of time before new colors become into all breeds? Like we've seen over the last couple of years, there's been lads in Belgium breeding Jasp, Fife. We've seen them breeding like Lipochrome. We've seen them deal even in Gloucesters, like I seen.
Yeah, with the Gloucesters, I noticed them. Yeah, people are going to experiment. They always have. This is the thing, isn't it? People have experimented with birds, and a few years ago, when I was at the at the Welsh National, there was a bloke down there, and it was called the Welsh Canary, and it was shown in a Fife cage, and he'd crossed God knows and stuff, and he had a whole range of birds down there, and he was trying to start up this new breed, but didn't hear much more about it after that. So, but he was exhibiting them in the Fife cages down there.
Yeah, because we're bringing back a lot of old and rare canaries. Obviously, we see we're trying to regenerate and reproduce extinct birds. But I think new color, the way it's increased in the last, I would say in the last 10 years, twofold, from a simple non-intensive and an intensive red factor to a variegated red factor, to having colors now that they don't describe what they look like.
No.
Like if someone told you, like before, someone had said to you, it's a non-intensive variegated yellow red hen, you could find it in a show cage tomorrow. But
Mm.
when you go into some of the shows, it's like an alpaline mosaic Theo colored blue, and you're like, you wouldn't even know where they are, you know. You
Yeah,
know, so I
I
think
was steward in the colours section down at Welsh National this last year, and the old boy that was doing it, he knew more or less what he was talking about, but the steward, he was red hot on it,
was he? Yeah,
different colours. So when these birds were coming up, we were bringing them up, putting them in front of him, and he's having to judge them and move them around, one thing and another. And he said, "Well, that's in the wrong class, and this shouldn't be there." And but the judge wouldn't have known that. The
without the steward.
steward, he was well up on all these different varieties and crosses and things. And I mean, the steward actually had to sort of, well, I'm not going to say he judged them, but he had to sort out the classes a bit. But
A
there's
bit
so
better, yeah.
many, I mean, I couldn't keep track of it.
Yeah, same here, same here. And then in the way of lizards, do you keep many pairs of lizards? Is it only blues you
No,
keep?
usually six pairs of lizards I go with. I mean, I usually try to breed somewhere between sort of 10 to 20, and I'm happy with
From,
that. I bred
from
12
six
this
from
year, so
six
I'm
pair.
happy.
From six pair.
Yeah, yeah, because usually, I mean, usual thing, because they are a bit more difficult to sex, and they don't exactly sing their heads off. They're very quiet, and you usually end up with putting two ends together or something like that. That's what usually happens. I mean, this year I had a matching, but not feeding. So I was in a right problem with that. So the one pair I managed to, I'd left it too late. So that was that round gone. So what the next round she had, what I did was I more or less started feeding the minute they hatched out the shell. I was topping them up and topping them up. And then it took about 5 days before she got the idea that this thing wriggling underneath her, when she stood up, she's supposed to feed it, you know. And but she had an nest of three, and she finished them off herself. But if I hadn't have been topping them up for a week, I would have lost them. So
Yeah, yeah,
they're not the easiest.
and is that the downfall? Like at the end of the day, the success of all boards is the fact they can reproduce.
That's what it's about. Yeah, yeah,
You
that's
know,
very
like
true.
we've seen over the years, we've seen many a board, and I'm sure every fancier here will have had one that was the finest specimen you could nearly breed,
Mm,
but it never reproduced, or they had the best show board that won every show, but when it came to the breeding season, it never reared a young. Like I'd have variegated hen, buff hen that won loads of shows, but then as soon as it came to the breeding season the following year, I think over the 2 years I kept it, I only bred one youngster from it.
mm.
You know, it wasn't a breeding board, it was a show board. And like having six pair and your expectations is 20, that proves that that's why they're nearly an old and rare, you know, they're difficult to keep, you know. And then on the Fife wise, what made you attracted to the Fife? Was it the fact that they were freely available, or what was it back in the day? Because in the 90s, the board from today and the board in the 90s when you started, they're by no means
Well,
anyway.
I suppose in a way it goes back to when I was a youngster showing. You had the same old rules then as you've got now. When you're in a junior, you can't show what your father shows because he's a champion.
Yeah,
So I kept
yeah,
everything else but, you know, so that
everything
was
else. But
more that. So although I still got the soft spot for the Gloucesters, it was something I never went down. So the next sort of variety that was, as you said, readily available and price wise were the Fifes. So I mean, I had zebras. I used to show the zebras up at the National and win up there with them. But and this is something else when they talk about using closed rings, and you think back then when you had to close ring zebra finches to be in the breeders' classes.
did you?
Emerson
Yeah,
legs to get the rings on.
yeah. They're not the easiest thing to ring, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
And then your love of fives, obviously, you stretched all the way through to today. You still keep relatively small pair. Would you keep 10 or 12 hens? Do you keep?
Yeah, I went with 14 this year, 14 ends, and I must admit or as a family, we booked a holiday a month earlier than normal, which buggered everything up. We was away for June, so I had to have everything out of the nest, feeding herself, so my other daughter could feed them while I was away. So didn't go down too well, that one. But what I did was I set some up ready for when I got back. So they were
Okay.
hatching. I think we got back on the Saturday, and they were hatching on the Friday night. So I got home and I had 15 youngsters ready for me on the Saturday morning. So that worked out
Brilliant.
great.
And how many Fifes did you breed?
49.
49.
Yeah,
Still a good
50,
number.
50 is my magic number.
Is
Space
it?
boys, just pure space
Space
boys.
wise.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
just haven't got
how
any
big is
room.
how big is the current boardroom?
Pardon?
How big is the current boardroom? How big is it?
6 by 8, I saw.
Oh, it's only small.
Yeah.
Just
Oh, yeah.
goes to prove. Just goes to prove you don't need these big fancy setups to breed boards.
I would have loved one years ago, must admit.
Yeah, big one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when the other week I had a message from Mr. Phil Warren saying he wanted to come and look at my bird room. I said, "No, you're all right."
Oh, yeah. You turned down Phil Warren.
I certainly did.
Oh, there's not many a man who can say that. There's not
Yeah,
many a man who can say that.
I'm
Like, no,
proud of it.
I'm proud of it and using it as a rod. He wanted to come and see it, and I told him to feck off. So, yeah, you're dead right. Um, so in the way of breeding method, you obviously alluded last year when everybody was breaking down, and we had a discussion with Donald of breeding alloy to alloyed, and
Yeah,
everyone was afraid. Everyone was afraid of their arse of it. But you stepped up to the plate and said, "No, I've been doing it for years, not a bother," and you gave it a go.
yeah,
Um, did you do white again, alloy to alloyed again this
yeah.
year?
Did all right again this year. I had
Did all right.
two pairs were fawn and white to a blue, and yeah, it all worked out. No dead in shell or lost any chicks or anything.
Hasn't tinned the feather.
Pardon?
You don't see the tinning of the feather or anything because it's alloyed to
No,
alloyed.
no. Everything's been okay. Because the thing was, I was desperate to breed some fawn and whites a couple of years ago, and I tried all which ways, but I could never get one. So what I had was a fawn and white hen and a blue carrier cock, and that's when I then finally got to breed my own fawn and whites. I mean, this year I bred five fawn and whites this year.
5 fawn whites. Are they
Yeah,
any good?
yeah, looking okay, looking okay. I mean,
Okay, yeah.
I kept one fawn and white hen and a fawn and white cock bird back from last year, so I might use them again this year. So I got plenty of fawn and whites to use. Plus, I got me blues, and of course, a lot of those will have cinnamon carrier cocks. So yeah, it works out okay. I never have any real problems with them. I mean, Harry Clark. I mean, he'd been doing it for donkey's years. White to white
Yeah,
man.
Harry has probably led the way in the way of recessive and
Yeah,
non-recessive white. Dominant.
I never got into the recessive. I must admit.
Yeah, it's and then Harry sort of I don't know whether anyone here would probably discuss afterwards when we're finished. Harry was a big fan of the black lights.
Yes.
Um, I don't know whether like I'm one for tinkering, as you know, I'm an awful man for tinkering, but I never really got into that. I obviously bought into the whole concept of the avian culture light bulbs that apparently emit more vitamin D than natural daylight and those sort of things. But I never sort of brought into the black light. It was really used for producing more hens, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Apparently so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you ever, does, is,
I
well,
never tried it. No, the only thing I've done really with the lighting is I tend to give them less light once they start into the molt. I found it does bring them through the molt a bit quicker
a bit quicker, yeah,
with
yeah.
less light. But
is there any sort of secret you'd like to share with us that you do a bit different? Like, I know you feed a bit of grit.
I got another sack this last week, actually.
I knew, and it's not for the footpath, as Adam Kendall would say. The only place for grit is on the footpath in the winter.
Right.
I'm not a believer in that. And I was only listening. I was only listening to Adam's podcast the other day. I must have been really stuck driving up the road. It was the one where Adam made the outrageous claim that his boards lived longer because he didn't feed them grit. Um,
Fair enough.
I know he claims that he has a 143-year-old canary hen that's still breeding in his board shed today. But
And
I'm
what he
yet
tried to sell to you, is it?
yeah, that was the one. That was the one I took out of the shed. Yeah, and
Yeah.
he still hasn't forgiven me for it. But in the way of feeding regime, is there anything you use different? Have you done that and changed? They're obviously inboards.
No, I must admit, a few years ago, somebody put me onto that Canary countrywide with the fan pellet, and I did a little experiment with the trays. They were in flight cages at the time, and so I put a big dish one end of what they normally have. At the other end, I put the one with the van pellet, and every single bird went straight for it, and there's no waste. So it is something that I must admit I use a lot. Now with this recent haste thing through the council, I must admit the first two sacks I had, I wasn't over impressed with Mr. Hayes, but there you go. So what I do is I get 2 sacks from Hayes and a sack of the countrywide with the van pellet, and then I mix it all up, so I end up with 3 big tubs of a mixture. And that's
Of a mixture,
yeah, that's so they're getting a bit of everything. I must admit the actual seeds that were in the Hayes Deluxe, I was not impressed at all. Really wasn't.
yeah. And is it much cheaper? Like, it's obviously a
Well,
premium brand. Like,
I'm just trying
premium
to
brand.
think. I think it would have been about £90, and you're doing it for 66, I think. So it's quite a saving.
Yeah, it's a good saving.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, this countrywide, which is the one I like, I mean, I can get under 30 quid anyway. So it's a bit of,
Yeah. So why sort of change?
yeah, that's the thing is, I mean, I've nearly always used pairs as compared with running a cockbird over several hens.
Yeah.
I tried it a couple of times and it didn't work for me. So I thought, well, I've got the time to sit there and run them 3 or 4 times a day. Means I'm retired. You've got time to do it. But
Yeah.
still
I would
didn't
agree.
work for me. So
Yeah.
so I stick with pairs, which obviously means you're keeping more cocks than the average person might. But that's
Yeah, I would have always encouraged novices starting out to breed in pairs,
Mm.
because there's nothing worse than a novice going into his first year, and it's not an easy thing to do to run a cock across or run feeder pairs or stuff like that. So I always like to tell a novice to breed in pairs the first couple of years, so he
Mm.
gets boards on the perch, and gets boards onto the show bench, regardless of what they are, regardless of the quality they are, regardless of that, and getting them into a cage for the first time and getting a fella to experience a show,
That's
for
it. It's
me,
the
is
experience
the
of it all, isn't it?
most
That's what it's
important
about.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I've seen novices try to be champions very quickly, and they'd say, "Oh yeah, but sure, Paul Arkin is doing it this way," and I'm going, "Yeah, but I've been doing it for 25 years that way, and
Yeah.
you're only in. So let's start." So it there's no particular way of breeding boards that works. Like, it really is. It's whatever suits yourself, and obviously you breeding pairs suit yourself, so it works. And the most important thing is, for the last 30 years, you've been having birds on the show bench
That's it.
consistently every year.
Mm.
So there's no right way or wrong way when it comes to that. Your method works.
Yeah, it
Um,
works for me. I mean, that's the
yeah,
I'm usually working on the 3rd weekend in February to have them ready. That is usually the weekend when the hens are in one cage and the cocks are next to them. And after a couple of days, I've got slides with holes in, and
and
I
they're
put
feeding
that
through.
slide in, and then they can see each other through. Then I introduce the nest pan, and then as soon as he starts breeding, I mean, by then he's usually feeding her through the holes anyway.
Yeah, he's
He's
feeding her to
getting
the
her
house.
interested. So that's it, and that's the way I do it.
Because traditionally here for a long time, when I first started, it was like an old tradition around where I lived, was you didn't pull the slide until St. Patrick's Day.
Right.
That was the way it was. You didn't pull the slide on the cages till St. Patrick's Day. And if you left it till St. Patrick's Day, you were nearly all guaranteed to have a good season. So it was around the 17th, second week, third week of March
Yeah.
before you even started. And it was the first and second week of April before you started to have your first chicks. And I knew 50 fanciers who'd done it that way. And it was nearly like a pigeon race. The lads would be, because back then there was no real use of mobile phones, to be fair. Like I had my first mobile phone in probably 96, but there wasn't many people with mobile phones in 95 and 96, you know. So you nearly had to drive up to see the fella to see if he pulled the slides. It was like a competition. Did you pull your slides? Did you pull? Because we all had house phones, but the house phone was in the house, it wasn't in the shed. So
Yeah.
if he was in the shed and you rang the house, you'd have to roar and get him and it'd be there all day. Did you jump on? Do you feed them peas? Is that something that we all added to our board's diet in the last 5 years? Seems to be petit pois. Seem to be the
Well,
biggest
I
things.
did try it, and I would say at least 50% of them just threw them out. Didn't want to know.
Didn't want to know.
No, didn't want to know. So I thought, right, what's the point? I mean,
Yeah.
my mixture. I mean, I went on to King's Head Food about 7 years ago, and that really seems to work well. So, and I use the old couscous. So it's like one spoonful of couscous, boiling water on it, and then I put 4 spoonfuls, same size, of the King's on it to mix it up. So it's about a 25%
Ratio.
something like that. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so you got the moisture, and although this King's it's not totally dry, but it's not that moist. It's sort of an in betweeny. Like when you
Yeah.
get a fresh bag of it, you can crunch it in your hand, and it'll stay there. You know, if it's
Yeah, well, I'm the same. Yeah, I was on CDE for I probably was on CDE because CDE was probably the only egg food that was available. Like Mike is in them as long as me, so Mike will probably agree or disagree. But I remember in the 90s, like I think CDE was the only egg food that
yeah.
we could really.
Hayes used to do one, didn't they? Hayes.
Yeah, yeah, I think see, like I was making arrowroot biscuits and boiled eggs and porridge in cups for I don't know how long, for like probably from the early 80s. Or like I remember you'd make a boiled egg and my mom would get us Jacob's arrowroot biscuits and we'd be doing 2 spoons of porridge oats, a boiled egg, and 3 arrowroot biscuits into a cup, mash them up and rare youngsters like mad. I think it was probably early 90s, probably, well, like when I met Sandra in 93, so it's before that. So it's probably, probably late 80s, early 90s that I moved on to my first commercial, as they would say, egg food.
Mm.
And
Well, I
then
think even in the early days, I used to put sausage rusk with it. You know, you could
Charlie
get
Gardner
on
still
the
uses
butchers.
that now. Yeah, Charlie Gardner. When you go to Charlie Gardner's place, he would have a bag of butcher's rusk all the time. Charlie would. Charlie would swear by it for the fact he would swear by it to the point because it absorbs moisture. And in the first couple of days of a youngster's life, hydration is the most important thing,
Yeah.
not so much nutrition, but it's hydration. You go out and you find the youngster, and the youngster's quite dry. If the number's passed, its crop will be full, but it'll be quite dry to touch because it's hydration. Because sometimes an egg food absorbs a lot of water out of your food. But I moved on to CDE, and I was probably on CDE for, just I don't know, 20 odd years. And then I moved about 8 or 10 years ago onto with Molan, the moist egg food. And I've been on that. And same as yourself, when you get the initial bag, you could squeeze it together and it holds well. How moist it is, I don't really know. Sometimes I think there's a bit of a honey in it that probably binds it more than
Yeah.
than a moisture. But I'd say now, like how much egg food do you, like I use very little egg food. I like a 20 kilo bag of egg food will do me the whole breeding season. And I waste a bit because I like to give it fresh because of the amount of stuff I put in besides egg food. Like I say dry egg food is probably 25% of my overall mix now.
Yeah, you got the fittest birds outside, haven't you, when you put it on the bird table?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. When I throw it away, I don't throw it away in the bin. I put it in a dish, and I go out and put it on the bird table. They all come down. They're all waiting for it. So
yeah, on the
they
exact
enjoy the
same.
egg
Yeah,
food. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
but
think I've seen.
talking of that moisture thing, this is why I use the couscous.
It's the same thing. Yeah,
Yeah, same idea. Yeah.
yeah. Are you a soak seed user?
Yeah, yeah. I'm a total soap seed man. Usually
I
wait for the first 3 days before I introduce that, but I always
yeah,
introduce it in a separate pot. I never mix the two together. A lot of people have this magical mixture, and it's all mixed in together. I have to always have the egg food in one and the soap seed in another.
just
All
so they
keep
can
it
take what they're
separate.
familiar with.
Yeah, but then they're not rooting around in it looking for special things. The one they want the egg food, that's where it is, and if they want the seed, that's where it is. You know, it's
Yeah, I could never get it right. And I've watched your videos, and I've watched yours. I bought the salad dryers that were recommended by Matt Eld. I done all that, and I could never do it. And I probably was always hesitant because there was always that thing of putting a bit of bleach in it, and there was always thing about putting a bit of thing right and Middleton and everything. I never got my head around it. And then
no,
this
I've
year,
never put bleach in it.
yeah. Now this year I did. This year I got a mix from Shane. I got a mix from Shane,
Mm.
a germination mix from Shane, and I used the Fraser's. I think it's just called Water Safe or something. It's called. It's basically it's. I put it in my water, leave it 24 hours, and it's amazing. You come back and there's a bit of a scum on the top. It takes like the chlorine out of the water, or stuff that. And I used that this year, and for the first time I didn't use it. I was probably a bit afraid to use it during the breeding season because I never used it and I like to have a good breeding season.
Mm.
But I did use it after the birds had weaned, and they definitely did like it. They definitely
Yeah.
did. And then all the birds left the shed. So I still have a bag of germination mix that'll probably do me the next 5 years in the bird shed with the amount of birds that are in the shed at the minute, and then so no wonder drugs. You're not doing anything different this year. You didn't bring anything in, especially you're
No,
not.
no. The only thing I do is I use the old cider vinegar every 3 weeks. That
Even
when I clean the
even through
pots.
breeding season.
Yeah, right the way through, every 3 weeks. Yeah,
Okay.
that particular weekend that I'm going to do it, all the pots are cleaned and then they're topped up with the cider vinegar. I mean, it's only a capful to a
A
liter
liter.
of water. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
it's quite a small, but instantly you put it in there, they're on it. They
Are
stay
they?
on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't, and all the way through breeding season, the whole lot.
Mm.
All the way through breeding season.
Yeah, yeah. I don't stop. Every 3 weeks they have it.
Yeah.
So
And
it's with
then
the youngsters. If when they're weaned, obviously they, like when the 3 weeks comes up, depending, they will get
they're
it
just,
straight away.
yeah, yeah.
But the
And then
parents obviously get it when they're in the nest.
yeah. And then obviously when we talk about mite, there's been the silver bullet that was reinvented this year. Um, have you a problem with mite? Have you used that? Have you used on the
No, I
Exalt?
haven't. I must admit, last year I thought I'd go down the route of this here front line, and I got in touch with Adam, and he sorted me out some, and I picked it up at the Midland show in November.
Yeah.
So I did all my birds then, as soon as I got home that weekend. And I did my birds on the Monday, Tuesday, and touch wood, been clear as a bell.
Yeah, no, I used the front line for years. I've used it,
Mm,
and people are saying just a little drop, just this. I never did. I used to give a full squirt down the whole back of their body.
that's
Like
it.
I used to do a full one from head to toe, my hand down the
That's
whole
it.
lot. Um, but I did sort of succumb to peer pressure this year and did buy the Exalt,
Yeah,
and
fine.
I've used the Exalt through this year. And there's many a lad have been using it for many years and swear by it. Um,
Yeah,
but
apparently it's
I did
very,
move
very
to the
good, but
Exalt.
I must admit I can't afford it. So simple as that.
Yeah, yeah, it's probably not for everyone. Yeah, what's it? It's probably £50, is it for a?
Well, some of it is like 70 quid a bottle.
Is it 70 quid? Yeah, yeah. I suppose if it works, it's what people are doing. And what's the aspirations for this year? Like, where are we going first? Are we obviously going to Stafford?
Well, my new venture this year was going to be London Fancy.
Oh yeah, you did get
Yes,
London
yes.
Fancy. Yes, I remember that. I
Yeah.
remember that curveball you threw in a few months
Yeah,
ago. Yeah.
first round was clear, and then the second
Okay.
round she had 4 good eggs. I thought, great. And she only hatched one. So I thought, oh, I've never ever managed to have a nest of one successful. Never. So instantly it was straight under the lizards, which are all the same sort of size. So
Yeah.
they brought that one up. And then the next round she died. So that's it. My total is one London Fancy.
One London Fancy. I know you've a
Yeah.
spare cock.
So I got a feeling that it could be a hen. So I got a choice of either putting daughter back to him or getting another one. I see Richard's going to be packing in. Richard Knowles.
Yeah, Richard Knowles. I seen that a couple of weeks ago online. Yeah,
He's
he's
selling
packed
everything
in.
up.
Yeah, I think I'm led to believe the boards are gone.
Oh right.
Um,
Yeah,
I'm
I
led
know
to
he
believe.
said he was going to take orders and be taking them up to Stafford.
Yeah, I'm led to believe the boards are gone. It's really sad. I'm going to try and get Richard on to a Zoom because Richard is very much like yourself. He's bred an imaginary sheep of birds over the years. He's had these like ornamental pheasants, and
Yeah.
he's kept a menagerie of birds. So I'm going to try and get Richard on. We're going to kick. You've kicked off the new series of sort of down the shed Zoom room interviews. So we've a couple lined up over the next few months. So
That's
we've
good.
kicked them back off. So we're going to try and do them a bit more regular. We probably lost our way a small bit of the last couple of months, as you would be well aware of what's gone on. That's what's gone on in the last sort of 10 months with fake profiles and
Mm.
stuff on the internet, and Mr. Cheshire in his ways, and Mr. Wood. So yeah, we probably need to find ourselves again and then get them back off, because I think people enjoy them. We've really enjoyed talking to you, in fairness.
Good.
And then, so you'll show at Stafford this year?
Yes, all being well. Yeah, the wife's not been too well.
Oh, sorry to hear
The
that.
fellow slipped over and done her arm in, and
Oh,
yeah, one thing and another. So I've got to make a decision in the next week or so because the ensign's
yeah.
got to be in.
Oh, yeah, they do. Yeah, they close. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So it's
yeah,
a question of obviously I'm off at 5:30, 6 in the morning, whereas
yeah,
at the moment I'm dog walking 3 times a day. So
yeah, yeah,
I've
yeah,
got to get something organised.
yeah, yeah. And
I
then,
really don't want to miss it. I really don't want to miss it.
yeah, yeah. Well, you'd be as popular there as the Fife section itself. So, so like, and then, is it just a couple of local shows then after that?
Well, in theory, will be that Cinderford one. That will be the next one, I think, after Stafford, because obviously the international's gone, and then you've got Oxford 1910. You've got the I Wycombe one. Midlands I should do, and then of course Jim's gone now, and it down in West Wales. That's
West
all
Wales,
happening.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
And then there's,
I always did that one. Look, you see, but we got
yeah,
this the Bristol one this year.
yeah, yeah. There's a show that you asked the lads in Down the Shed to sponsor. What was that one?
That was a Cinderford.
Yeah, when is that?
That
I must
is
get all this.
the 20. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure. Is it Sunday the 28th
28th of October.
of October? Yeah, it's
Yeah,
the day
yeah,
we mess about with the clocks.
yeah. I must gather all that stuff and start getting the stuff to get it over to you, because
Yeah.
of the send you a lot of awards, and of to send you a lot of rosettes.
Hmm.
And so we'll organise that. So yeah. So listen, Graham, great to have you on. In fairness,
Okay then.
you've kicked off the new season, and for you to say where people want to listen to you, yes, they absolutely would. I can guarantee now this will be a hit when we download it onto Spotify. Lads will
Well, I hope
download it.
somebody enjoyed it anyway.
I do. I definitely do. I would listen to you all day. And like, we are good friends. And through all the stuff that's gone on, you've always been in touch. You've always kept in touch and send messages and a bit of encouragement and a bit of a kick in the hole.
I'm supporting the guy down in Australia at the moment.
Yeah.
Fife
Is
bloke.
it Mike Burlington? Mike Burlington, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love his enthusiasm. He's I don't know him. I've never really spoken to him. I just find him a really good guy to watch online. And how is things going with himself?
Yeah, he's doing really well. He's got I think he's had 30 odd in his first round, which because he struggled for a few years with borders. Now we know what borders can do. They can do well or they can do nothing at all. And
Yeah,
so he was really disappointed. He was so keen, but he was so disappointed. He had no youngsters from his borders. So then he switched
yeah,
to Fifes, and now he's on the right way. So I'm in contact with him most days. We have a chat on the old messenger thing, and
brilliant.
so it's pretty good on that one. He's enrolled me into the New South Wales Fife Club or something. But there you go. It's one of them things.
Yeah, yeah. You can't keep away from getting involved in clubs, can you, Graham? Like you're only just gone out one, and all of a sudden you're in one. But it's slightly a bit further than a 6 mile cycle on your bike. In fairness, it's in Australia. So listen, Graham, thanks for having you on. I'm going to end it, and then we'll get the lads out. The lads can obviously anyone who wants to chat there will do it now. Thanks, Graham. Talk to you now.